been talking about dealing with grief during the holidays, and my guest is John Baker, a grief counselor with Alive Hospice. John, before we went to the break, we were talking about those of us who are kind of on the outside looking in sometimes, and we don't always know the best way to deal with our friend or our loved one who's dealing with a loss. Are there some things that we shouldn't do to try to help them through this grieving process or help them through the holidays?
One of the big ones is not to assume that we know how they feel, even if we've had a similar loss. It's really a good idea not to assume we know how they feel. This is a very different person. It was a very different relationship than the one I had, even if it's a similar loss. So it's always good to ask, not to assume. And the issue of, especially with rituals and traditions, not to assume that this grieving individual would not want to do this, but would want to do that. That's more about me wanting what I want. I may have a really good intention, and that's usually the case, but even with that, it's really important that I ask this grieving individual, here's what I'd like. What do you think about that? Now, this grieving person may welcome the suggestions because they're feeling completely lost, but always ask first, and don't assume anything. Always ask, and that really makes a huge difference in that person feeling some sense of control. Sometimes a grieving person is wanting to take care of everybody else. I don't want to ruin someone's holiday experience with my tears, with my grieving. Well, I certainly would want them to talk about that, but we can do so much more by saying, look, Mom, Dad, whomever, this is going to be a tough time for you. Recognizing that, I want you to be able to feel what you feel. Don't feel like you have to put on in order for us to be okay. So, those are some good areas to consider.
Okay. And I think sometimes we just assume that the person doesn't want to talk about the subject at all. That'll only make them sad.
Yes.
But sometimes it's the opposite, don't you think? And it's okay to give them permission to say, feel free, let's talk about this person.
That's a perfect example, because giving the person permission to talk about their loved one can be such a relief, because there can be so much tension, the proverbial elephant in the room, that everyone's gathering, they've at least made that decision, and no one is mentioning this person's name. No one is saying a word, and it's as if, well, they didn't exist. That can be such a burden for the grieving person to bear. It's much better to really, no matter how awkward, how uncomfortable, to bring that up and do the best you can to make that person's presence a part of what's going on. The air goes out of that elephant immediately, and it can be tough. But what I've found is that often you'll have tears, then suddenly out of those tears comes laughter at the same time. It's a really good thing to try and let that happen, for sure.
I totally agree. I think it's beautiful that you all offer winter grief support groups for anybody out there who may feel like, I just need to talk about this or be around other people who are going what I'm going through. And there you see the information on the screen. Tell us a little bit about these support groups.
Well, the support groups, in addition to our counseling, give people an opportunity to be able to be with other people who've had a similar loss, if not exactly the same kind of loss in terms of the relationship. Often people want to be able to talk to someone else that is going through basically a very similar experience, to be able to hear, what are you doing, so that they don't feel so alone, because so much of this experience can be, I'm the only one going through this. I'm the only one experiencing this. I feel crazy. To be able to sit in a room with 8, 10 other people and to hear that, oh my gosh, you're going through the same thing I am. Such a validation of my grief. And it really gives them a sense of being able to relax and being able to talk about this. So it can be quite a wonderful experience in terms of having that. It's not for everyone. Some people enjoy the individual counseling better, but it's just, hey, come and try it. if it, go to a session or two and see how it works for you.
And speaking of individual counseling, you do offer that as well.
Yes.
Throughout the year. And there's some information you see about that. It's for both adults and children, Nashville, Madison, and Murfreesboro offices. So folks can always come throughout the year if they just want that individual attention.
Absolutely, any time of the year. And we offer it not only to our Alive Hospice families, but we offer to anyone in the community who's had any kind of loss and they're really struggling with it. Please give us a call. We'd be glad to help out.
Thank you so much, John.
Oh, it is my pleasure.
I always enjoy talking to you. It's really been my pleasure.
Thank you.
I also want to thank my earlier guests for being here and thank you for watching. I'm Tawanda Coleman. I'll see you next time.